Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I apologize for the recording. I am still recovering from an injury that makes it difficult to speak for extended periods. As a result, the presentation will be audio-visual only, reserving my energy for questions afterward. I offer a large thank you to the organizers, facilitators, and all the presenters thus far during the conference. It's been a true pleasure. We in the field of peace and conflict studies find ourselves in the odd position of having a strong end goal in mind from our inceptions within academia. This is an initial and quite hefty goal at that. Our field was founded for the goal of world peace. This is why we study and research and delve further and further into the fray of the human condition. It's why we originally started, and it's why we continue to dive. Unfortunately, it appears as though our field has failed in this regard. We have failed to communicate effectively not only within academia, but also and especially outside of it, as our end goal and aspiration of world peace can never be systemically achieved without first laying the groundwork for understanding it, establishing a wider peace literacy in the process. The ideas and research proposals I present today attempt the first systematic grounding of peace measures on a wider macro-scale grassroots basis. They have also been broken down to be understood by policy wonks and policymakers as well. It has been the habit in our field to look at conflicts the world over and try to understand what went wrong. So, counterintuitively, instead of studying what's wrong with the world, I have intentionally decided to study what's right and what works, focusing on the infrastructures of peace themselves. I offer a warning in this, though. In no way do I claim these measures are the be-all and end-all. These are merely frameworks offered across fields and expertise to promote the infrastructures and cultures of peace necessary for the required multi-layered and multimodal synergistic systems to take root. They are to be used as frameworks for the highest social impact and actionables on the ground in townships and regions around the globe. I am under no illusion that the processes alone will accomplish this. They're not meant to. I seek pan-disciplinary critique and guidance on what measures and indicators may work better. Our only aim is to facilitate a creation of something that works. This hopefully starts that process. Also, in organizing these measures, pains were taken to not include measurements and systems that perpetuate or encourage structural violence and/or oppression, or the economic militance of paternal neoliberalist policies and practices. So before one asks why one measure or another wasn't included, first ask if it fits in this school of thought. Before we can begin in earnest, however, we need to define what peace is and what it isn't. Johann Galtung, father of the peace studies field, was the first to offer a peace definition that included more than the mere absence of direct violence as a definition for peace. He stated that deep structural violence with a lack of direct violence and/or war is not in fact peace, or what we now call liminal peace or negative peace. According to Galtung, structural violence is a direct, cultural, and structural triangle, none of which can be divided from another. Structural violence includes racism, sexism, heterosexism, poverty, income inequality, and much more. Galtung's violence triangle comprises firstly direct physical violence, then cultural violence, and structural or indirect institutionalized violence. These nodes demonstrate the need to understand the relationships and interconnectedness of all three forms. The foundations of the concept of positive peace is grounded in structural violence and social justice ecosystems. In order to understand structural violence, however, one needs to understand Thomas Boudreau's assertion of human agencies in opposition, which state that in the struggle for resources, the social imprints left cause further social struggles among the defeated and victor alike. It is in these conflicting systems of economies, status, power, race, gender, and sex that structural violence is found. For in the robbing of any individual or group of their fullest development and potential, we find structural violence. For example, in current economies, the systems in place have erected oligarchical structures masked as meritocratic ones, providing resources and opportunities to the haves, whilst creating boundaries, both physical and abstract, for those who do not. These limiters dam the very ability of individuals and microcultures to act for their own benefits. According to Pew in the Critical and Emancipatory School of Peace Building's critique of the liberal democratic peace paradigm, these systems and practices are the drivers and inhibitors to an integrated peace literacy and communal implementation of this much-needed peace ecosystem. Given humanity's long and trophied history, it's understandable we would have a bit of trouble here. Thousands of writers, politicians, business people, tyrants, advocates, religious leaders, and devotees have used the word peace to mean what they want it to mean, sometimes violently so. The problem with this widespread appropriation is that it comes with endless projections and littered histories, mixed further with false assumptions, advertising campaigns, and often oversimplified hopes. Peace is not a static phenomenon, but a convergence of macro networks, intimately intertwined with hundreds of grassroots microsystems, all building and feeding communal and self-actualization. Peace, positive peace, is when these thriving systems collectively create a positive synergism cycle between environmental, political, and cultural sustainable practices. The lenses and frames we use to break down and understand our societies and cultures can and do have lasting non-conscious implications. M. Ann Brown argues that it is the lens itself that creates this divide and leads to the colonialist paternal implementation. She reports, much of this is based on economic and political theory on particular conceptions of liberal market statehood that frequently bear little relation to the political, social, or economic realities on the ground, or the governance values and practices of those populations. Due to the nature and dynamism within these lenses, structures, and institutions found in our world, peace has been slippery to quantify and has proven to be inherently difficult to map. Perhaps this is in no small part due to the systemically integrated complexity woven into the foundations of Galtung's original concept. The measures you will glimpse today not only align with the 2030 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but take matters a few steps further by including space itself as a pillar to provide further stakeholder actionabilities for a heightened integration into eco-urban contexts. These measures utilize and synthesize non-conscious human cognitions within environmental psychology sphere of study to further ground positive peace into the lives of world citizens, literally building positive peace. The methods outlined here are a critical emancipatory peace-building methodology geared toward increasing actionable and tangible community, regional, and state assessments for the co-creation of positive peace frameworks. Put simply, this is a quantitatively driven conscientization process building off of Freire and Lederach, while heavily integrating Scott Boland and Sarah Williams Goldhagen. The quantitative analysis and assessment is based in 4 categories: socio-political, socio-cultural, lived space, and socio-economic. We call these the peace poles. Under the peace poles are 21 contextual indicators, with the subsequent measures totaling 97. The 21 indicators are distributed among health, human rights security, safety, autonomy, environmental sustainability, trust, community cohesiveness, diversity, racism, gender equity, walkability, connectivity, access to nature, sustainability, environmental stressors, locality, income inequality, the happiness index, secure retirement, food security, and lastly, a shared economy score. These 21 indicators were chosen from cultures living in relative positive peace on macro scales, while using the theoretical frames and interpretations derived from positive peace literature. These were further developed from their individual and collective cultural values while being grounded in what works in societies to bring about the best health, social, and environmental outcomes. The 97 individual measures under the 21 indicators have a range of 0 to 1, the lowest possible individual measure being 0, the highest possible individual measure being 1, the lowest possible overall score being 0, the highest possible overall score being 97. Each measure is to be framed within the area of emphasis under each pole and should be taken within that context for the prevention assessment. The assessments are designed to be grounded in, researched by, and used as is appropriate to each locality. This data set is meant to be used as a critical peace assessment to empower localities toward transformative peace through the critical emancipatory peace building as part of a preventive version of NAN's collaborative action agenda. What Christina, Sean, and I have been working on is a pathway for localities to build, IGOs to fund, and measures to inform structures and processes that work within our bounded rationalities to build systems of positive peace. A couple potential flaws within this system are first its complexity and breadth. It's not very accessible, and secondly, its infancy, as it has yet to be piloted and further refined. Another potential flaw or argument against this assessment could be that it is grounded in Western frames, and as such could perpetuate paternal neoliberalist practices and policies. To address this first potential flaw, I have been creating an iOS and Android app with the algorithms and processes built into it for ease and accessibility of use, as well as increasing peace literacy. A web page will also be constructed by web designers to provide further grounding in the literature written at 11th grade reading level. With these, the assessment has the added bonus of potentially providing thousands of data points with folks working together on the ground rather than merely dozens with no one knowing about them within their communities. While working in local, regional partnerships, folks will also be additionally incentivized by local private and governmental organizations appropriate to their region and locality. For example, if a youth fills in a peace poll in southern Utah, H&M could provide a free t-shirt or Starbucks could provide a free coffee. But again, these would not be up to us, but up to the localities themselves to provide appropriate incentives for more grassroots participation. In regard to the perpetuating of Western frames and practices, I would again say that these are merely frameworks and are not intended to be a substitute for locally, culturally appropriate peace-building processes. Again, frameworks. Furthermore, these measures are an attempt to quantify the systems we live in, while also reaching for the infrastructures the world needs to shift to the dynamically different infrastructures and systems of positive peace. We welcome any and all critique from PACs, as well as other fields of study to ground the processes further to create a working framework to begin the systematic paradigm shift needed for our planet. These measures are a critical emancipatory peacebuilding methodology geared toward increasing actionable and tangible community, regional, and state assessments for the co-creation of positive peace frameworks. It is hoped that by using these quantitative tangibles to facilitate the peace processes, a grassroots synergy and emotional resonance will begin to flower and flow, creating a perpetuating, locally driven, positive peace. Thank you.